everybody. I'm Brian,
I'm Quinn.
and welcome to Infectious Enthusiasm, the podcast where we talk excitedly about Pathfinder 2nd Edition. And one of my favorite parts of Pathfinder 2nd Edition actually only takes up a single page in the rulebook, but it has so much stuff packed into that one page. If you listened to our previous episode, you already know what I'm going to say is we are talking about Downtime. And I like the fact that Pathfinder 2nd Edition actually mechanizes the downtime. They've got rules, they've got things that you can do, and I like it so much that I'm going to ask Quinn to talk about it in detail because he knows a lot more about it than I do.
Thanks. So downtime is basically, so we were just talking about exploration mode, where, we've sort of zoomed out time and we're either traveling overland or we're exploring the dungeon. And then downtime, I often call downtime montage mode, right? Where things are going out from like days or weeks, and we're just covering a suite of activities, right? We're going to say we're going to craft an item, right? From gathering the materials to working the forge and doing the thing, it's a suite of activities that's going to take a certain amount of time, or we're going to get a job with the earn income action. We'll come back to the earn income action. It is my favorite downtime activity. Or we're going to treat a disease, or just really rest up for a very long time, or forge documents. These things that it would be silly if you started putting them in the round in combat time round, and you don't want to sort of spend your time sort of covering each aspect of it. Downtime covers in Pathfinder, and it's the way because it has its own sort of mode in the game. There are lots of things that interact with it, like in the Kingmaker campaign that has to deal with like raising your own kingdom and armies and things like that. A lot of the actions that you take in the kingdom phase are downtime activities, right? So they're just covered on this in this montage. So you're build up an army, train the army, or try to build roads or things like these. These are all sort of covered under that. So it can do a lot of stuff and let you kind of control the flow of the game and sort of have these sort of smaller mechanics and things. It's not just maybe it might just be a skill check, but it might be a skill check with like certain rules governing it, like craft. You make a check and it's going to cost X amount and things like that. And it's a good container for these different actions that you can take. And there's a lot of downtime actions. So it itself is mechanically minimal, but it can contain lots of other mechanics in it that you don't need to, like, though there are a lot of downtime actions, you only need to interact with the ones that you're going to need given your game. So it's not that you need to know all the rules for the gazillion downtime actions that there are.
Right. And one of the things I do like about it, though, is like you said, mechanically, it doesn't take up a whole lot of space mechanically. But I like the fact that it's there. Okay, so when I first ran across downtime rules, I thought it was a weird idea because I've been running and playing games for decades. So, I mean, that's just the kind of thing that, the group talks about and you figure out what happens. And the more I talked about that, though, the more I realized having mechanics for it's a really good idea, because I thought back on some of those conversations I had back when I was playing. It could have been D&D, it could have been Cyberpunk, it was anything I was running. You're going to have time that the characters are doing something that isn't sort of the main thing that combat or whatever that the game does. And I realized I would have really appreciated some guidance back in the day when one of my players came up and said, I want to do something like, craft an item, or, I want to get a job or whatever. And I had to make it up, and I feel like I probably did a decent job. but having some guidance, having some actual dice rolls to work with, that would have been great. So once I realized that, I became team Downtime. I thought that was an excellent idea. And the other thing I like is that it gives the players a list of things that they might not have thought of.
Yeah, yeah. Having that menu of actions is really helpful for sort of player activity. So it's cool because it's not just okay, you're in town, what do you do, right? And then it's like, oh,
Yeah,
we're gonna go shopping, or I don't know, I'm gonna twiddle my thumbs, right?
right.
It's you're like, oh, well, I can craft stuff, right? Crafting is like a thing in Pathfinder, so you can go, okay, well, I've got how many days? Okay, well, I can give it according to the rules, I can craft X amount of stuff in these days. I even have some feats that let me craft stuff faster. So I'm
Yeah.
gonna use some of my stuff, go find a forge or crafting place in town, and start putting some things together. Well, and somebody else is going to go, gather information is a downtime activity. So like, I'm going to go like gather information about this thing that we're looking into on town.
Yeah.
All right, that's great. And and then someone else is like, hey, I'm going to get a job. I'm going to earn income. And now I guess here's where I talk about earn income, my favorite of the downtime activities.
Hmm.
Because like in my campaigns that I run, when people are doing the earn income, it is often a great there's this mechanical thing of okay, you're going to roll and you're going to see uh, what you earn over the days with whatever job it is that you're going to be doing. Also, there is also that part where there's a hook into what your character did besides
Oh,
being an
sure.
adventurer, which is great, right? So to earn income is assuming that you actually have some skill besides murdering dragons, and
Right.
and so you get to use any lore or profession skills that you've got there to get that extra money. But then you can use it as sort of a glimpse. So we're in a new town. I'm going to start looking for odd jobs or something related to my profession, and then we're going to now use that as a lens to talk about the place that you are in. Right,
Yeah.
and so it ends up it can be a really great sort of travel log, sort of slice of life thing. You can use the mechanics as a base for really great role playing scenes. So in one of my campaigns, this has been running for like 3 years now. One of our characters she comes from a long line of barristers from Cheliax who practice infernal contract law. Uh, and and she just studies law in general. She's like sort of practice attorney. So often when we go to a new place, when there's downtime, she's like, well, I'm going to go like check out the court systems and see if people need some sort of
Oh, interesting. Okay.
some sort of like public defender kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And these are just some of the awesomest scenes because I get to like when they were last in this one in Ustalov, I got to sort of describe how the poor were, she goes and she's trying to find people to help out, and she finds that there are all these poor people going into the court, but like they're just basically getting railroaded even when they have defense. The judge, they just have to hope that their attorney bribed the judge enough. They're like, no one's getting an actual trial, like their attorneys aren't even really making defenses for them. And then
Yeah.
and then she got like a critical the character, she got like a critical success on her earned income. So then like what we'd end up describing is this thing where she goes and like not knowing sort of the customs and not really caring, she goes and actually just tries to defend the person, and like
Oh,
even the person
no.
she's
Yeah.
even the person she like the judge is looking at the character like, what are you doing? And like the person she's defending is like, what are you doing? And like everybody's like, what did you just do? Right.
Oh,
But
no.
then afterwards somebody comes up and be like, gives them a couple copper and be like, please, I'm next. Right. Like just do that thing. Right. And then all of a sudden over the course of the day, like there's like the judge who is speed working through all of the like trials is actually
Right.
having to like talk and like
Oh,
remember
nice.
law and stuff like that. And eventually they all the people who were in line for court that day come over to our PC, and they're like, basically, you defend us, right? Like you're going to be our attorney now, right? And then at one point, the judge comes in, so they're all sitting in the back of the court, all the people she's going to be defending, right? And then the judge is sitting there and is like, okay, so wait a minute, how many people are you defending now, right? Because I can't be talking about like the law all day. And then like all the people like kind of raise their hand, and he's like, okay, everybody, your cases are dismissed, and like points at the PC and is like, you never step foot in my court again, right?
Right.
And then it was like this, big thing. They're like buying her drinks, and it just like was this really cool.
That's funny.
Like role playing moment. From like a 1d20 roll earn income.
That's awesome. Well, that's one of the things I really like about the earn income activity. Is like just your example is perfect because it gives you an idea of what the world is like. And I like the fact that the designers put some thought into the economy of the setting. Because, if you're playing Pathfinder literally by the book, it takes place in Galarian, which means that they've got an idea of what they want the setting to be like and what they want the economy to be like. And if you make any changes to that activity, that means that you have made a statement about the economy in that place. The other thing I like is it gives you an idea of what the average NPC, what kind of money the average NPC might be making. So, and that really puts into sharp contrast the sacks of money you're walking out of a dungeon with, because, and it also kind of explains why those people that can go into the dangerous places with the monsters and the stuff do it. I mean, one of the reasons, if your goal is to make a lot of money, that's a good way to do it, And I like the world building aspect of that in a lot of ways. I think that's really cool. And I hadn't thought about rolling so well that you actually get fired, though, like the lawyer did.
Yeah, that was...
she did so well. They were like, okay, here's a bunch of money, now go away.
Yeah, like you're just like never show up here again. You're
nice.
You're you're going to give the people hope, and we can't have that.
We can't have that. Well, and again, it gave you the chance to say something about the setting.
Right.
It gave you the chance to drive home how corrupt that system is. And but I also like that for one brief and shining moment, she made it better.
Right. And then I also took that like her critical, like, because at this point the characters are was about 14th level or so. So the characters are like high level. So I feel like, you can also, a critical when if they had done that and the character was like 4th or 5th level, I probably would have just been like, oh yeah, you were pretty successful and you got some attention.
Yeah.
Right. But like at 14th level, I just feel like, oh, you're like so good at this that you're like, that you, if allowed to continue, you would shut the whole system down as it stands, right?
Exactly.
And being at that thing where you can sort of give this context based on like level and effect is really nice too. And just in general, like I really like that you can use a suite of downtime activities to flavor whatever your campaign is. Like I mentioned the Kingmaker thing where, all your stuff is like all your downtime activities are kingdom related. But like if you're playing the Strength of Thousands path, you're a student at a magical university. And so then you get actions like study. And because you're going to classes, like your downtime activities, when you're not adventuring, all your downtime activities are like going to class and doing stuff. Sure. And then they are these usually pretty simple mechanical underpinnings that you use to role play whole scenes, right? We made one roll for that earn income roll, but that was about like 20, 30 minutes of role play. For that one thing, and for a study, you can make that quick minute or two description, or you can describe. You can get really into detail about the material they're studying, and they even have one of my favorite things for the Strength of Thousands. They have the study activity, but then which takes a certain amount of time. But then you also have cram when you haven't been when you haven't been able to when you haven't been
Right.
studying right. You can sort of jam your head
Nice.
full of
Yeah,
stuff,
yeah.
right?
And just like actual cramming, sometimes it works great, sometimes it doesn't. So
Right.
yeah.
Right.
Nice.
And it's really awesome because it actually, the cram activity goes into some of the other like basic mechanics of the game, right? Like if you basically you get to do 2 study activities in the same period of time, but if you aren't careful, you have to make like a flat check, or you end up getting the fatigued condition for the day.
Yeah, okay. Oh
Right.
yeah, okay, that makes sense. I like that.
So
Yeah.
it's like a neat kind of thing, like, oh yeah, like I was up all night studying, right? And like it shows, right? Because like
Right.
fatigue is an awful condition to have.
Yeah, those of us that went to college, we've been there.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And so it's like I just love how it lets you express all of these things without introducing like it's important. They do have a victory point system, which we can like talk about on another episode. That's basically sort of a skill challenge system, but Downtime is much lighter and more self-contained than that. It's when you
Right.
want to express sort of what's happening, and you want to sort of get some results, but you don't. The journey and the process isn't dramatically important, right? Like you pull out a skill
Absolutely.
challenge when you
Yeah.
want to zoom in on the sort of quality of the action, like how it's done matters, but just that it's happening, use Downtime.
And that's one of the things that really turned me around on Downtime is there are plenty of times when I'm running a game and a player wants to do something that's important either to them personally or in a lot of cases to the story, but it doesn't require any role playing. And I like that there's mechanical support for stuff like that. You make a skill roll or two. And the other thing I like is that uh, your non-combat skills, you still get to use your non-combat skills.
Mm-hmm.
Because to me, especially in a game like Pathfinder, uh, I really want to use the non-combat stuff too. So I like the fact that not only are they there, you've got you've got systems specifically for those.
Right, and it lets characters sort of specialize in being sort of like. While some characters might be like, I'm super combat monster. Like you can have, like you have, it's possible to have characters in Pathfinder who are just amazing in Downtime. Like in our same game that I was talking about with the barrister, we have a one character who's a gnome alchemist, and they're pretty decent in combat. But like when it comes down to, oh, we're in Downtime, they're like, okay, what would you like crafted? They have like every crafting feat, every like bonus to crafting. They can craft magical stuff. They can basically make anything that the party needs as long as they have some supplies. And so they just, are like, we get into some periods of Downtime and they're just basically, take requests and just make whatever is needed and, set up their alchemy. They can just get the party super prepared for anything that they want to do. And then that's what they enjoy. They enjoy being able to sort of like go into the lab and like prep everyone up. And then you'd have people who are like an investigator who, is really great at like, getting clues and gathering info.
Oh yeah.
So like people sort of specialize in all of these different areas.
And I like that a lot too.
So what do we have in terms of games we want to talk about that do Downtime?
Well, I mean, the big one is Blades in the Dark.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mentioned that the Pathfinder Downtime, it literally takes up one page. It bleeds into other parts of the book, but the Downtime actual information is a single page. In Blades in the Dark, it's an entire 16-page chapter, because Downtime is similar in many ways to the way that Pathfinder 2 does it, but it occupies a lot of the same space, but then it also does other things. For example, Blades in the Dark it's mission based, right? So the core gameplay is you've got a team of people going off to do some sort of a score. It's usually something illegal, and they are, you've got people that specialize in doing dastardly illegal things. And the first thing that you do in the downtime phase is get paid for whatever score you did. Or if you failed, you don't. But, but so, and you've also got, what else does it do? Oh, well, it does, you face the consequences of things that you did earlier, often during a mission, but also during sometimes other downtimes. The rest of the world reacts to whatever it is you've done. And that happens during downtime. And the other thing that is very similar to what Pathfinder does, though, is you've got what are called basically just long-term actions. So you've got like a long-term project if you want to work on something, and that usually requires multiple downtime phases. But all of these are heavily mechanically supported. You've got a lot of options. And I know I think you and I played probably around the same amount of Blades in the Dark, haven't we?
Yeah, I think you might play a little more than me.
Maybe a little, but I mean, I think we're both really familiar with it. So what's your feeling about how Blades does downtime?
Well, I mean, it's really very cool, and I feel like a couple things. One, Blades is another game that, similar to Pathfinder, who uses modal play to its advantage, right? Like, hey, we're in the mission mode, right? So everything has this context. This is what we care about. We don't care about these other things, right? Like, you're not going to get confused, right? No one's ever going to be trying to acquire assets in the middle of a mission, right? Or like do like,
Right.
indulge or vice, because we know that's a downtime activity, and so these things don't mix. Those things don't happen in this play, right? And that's a really useful boundary. Because so much of how a role playing game is sort of carried on and proceeds is based on knowing what do I roll, or like when do I roll, and for what reasons do I roll things.
Yeah.
Right. And having these modes or phases lets you know, hey, here you're rolling for these things to do this stuff. And then when you go into the downtime, you get to go, cool. Like I'm rolling for these things at this time, right? I'm rolling for these sort of longer term recovery and build up things, and so like a lot of the, I think it's interesting. I think one of the things that differentiates it from Pathfinder is that it is a lot of this is actually downtime is really strongly used for character growth.
True.
In this, right? You're building up projects, you're trying to like get new sort of assets, you're trying to like recover from things, so that a lot of character buildup is happening in Blades.
Oh, and it's also the time that you expand your territory. So
right.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And so that's got, and another thing with a significant amount of mechanical support is that section of it, which I like a lot. It also has a little mini game that you play in case you get sent to jail, which I like, because like one of the characters can just sort of, well, sometimes you just get caught and sent to jail, but other times one of the characters can sort of volunteer to take the hit for the rest of the team. But I like it that you've also got like, you could come out of jail with like some cool stuff too, which I like. Because, the whole point of it is you're a bunch of criminals, right? So I like that idea.
Yeah, exactly.
And your point about the character growth, I want to briefly mention Girl by Moonlight, which is, as of this recording, still a very new game. It's by Andrew Gillis, and it's also based on the same system as Blades in the Dark. And it uses downtime differently, though. On Blades in the Dark, downtime happens after the mission, and in Girl by Moonlight, it happens before the mission, because it's mostly used to forge connections between the characters. So it's a little more of a slice of life vignette than it is the resting period after a mission is over. It's not entirely different. You still have long-term projects and investigation and things like that. But I just wanted to point out that even within that system, I like, because Girl by Moonlight is, your characters are magical girls, like the Guardians and Sailor Moon. So it's all about the interactions and the relationships between the characters. So Andrew has taken the opportunity of the downtime phase to really focus on that aspect of it, which I think is great.
Mhm. Yeah, that's awesome. I haven't read that one yet, but
Yeah, it's good. I definitely want to run that one at some point. So
nice. Um,
I'll let you know.
yeah. Um, one I wanted to. Do you want to say anything more on Blades in the Dark?
No, I think that it scratches the surface, but I think we hit the highlights.
Yeah, yeah. So one thing I want to mention, it was interesting, and as we covered this, I realized there aren't a ton of examples that aren't forged in the dark, of
Right.
like a lot of like heavy like downtime use. I mean, I could point out Starfinder, but like it's on a similar level of Pathfinder
That's a
in
fair
its
point. Yeah.
usage. They do have a lot of really great downtime activities in Starfinder, though. I will just point out that like express a lot of the flavor of the setting. Shout outs to, for example, playing video games is actually one of
Nice.
the downtime activities which can like let you relax and unwind.
I like it.
But then like looking for other systems or in a different space that use sort of downtime. One of the best ones, and I'm sure I'm missing something, but one of my favorite examples of it, though it wasn't explicitly like a downtime called downtime activity, but it was in the old school Marvel heroic role playing game, the Cortex based one. They had the notion of recovery scenes.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and then you could use those in between like sort of action scenes to, your character's going to sort of heal up, and you can, when I played with those games, when I played those games, I would usually use those as sort of like role playing and sort of transition scenes, just describing kind of, so like almost slice of life downtime scenes, and then you
Right.
sort of make the roll for recovery at the end of it, and then
I think
carry on.
that's brilliant. You're right, and it does a really good job of depicting those scenes from comic books
Right.
because a lot of them, to me, like back in the day reading the X-Men, a lot of my favorite scenes were when they were just hanging out at the X Mansion, and so yeah, that really um, that's an excellent use of that. And you're right, yeah, that was kind of a proto downtime phase.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, and I'm sure there are more ones that I can't think of, but like I think downtime, I think as we understand it today, is actually a relatively modern RPG concept of putting it in a, not that there is not downtime in a normal RPG, but the of putting mechanical framing and explicitly
Right.
calling it out in a rule set, and making these sort of containers is actually relatively new. I'm sure someone who will know that, like, in 1970 somebody made an obscure role playing game that did it, but I'm just talking
Yeah,
about in the
exactly.
main line of RPG development.
Yeah, I'm sure Talislanta was heavily engaged in downtime, but I'm still trying to. But yeah, same here. But I mean, as we've discussed before, everything that exists now grew out of something
Right.
else. So I mean, it's like fronts in Powered by the Apocalypse games. Fronts are literally just the game master coming up with stuff, but mechanizing it helps me as the game master. And it's the same thing with downtime or anything else. Things that have actual mechanical support that didn't used to, even if I don't use them or if I use them in a different way, it it changes the way I think about that. It changes the way I think about like Blades in the Dark and Pathfinder specifically. It changes the way I approach doing the downtime when my players need something. Or as a player, again, like I said before, it gives me a list of things to do. And even if I don't want to do all of them, at least I've got some options to bounce off of.
Mhm.
And because I might not have thought of a bunch of the things that are on that list.
Right.
So I like that it just I mean, anything that makes the game more fun and makes it easier to play or run, I am all for. And that is literally what we've been talking about this whole time.
Yeah. And like, okay, soapbox time. I'll make it a brief soapbox, but it's but like what but talking about what you're expressing here is every role playing game is run, any specific instance of us playing a role playing game has what I always think of as their formal rules and the informal rules, right? And formal
Hmm.
rules are, what rules as written, rules as intended, and what you're getting out of the book and implementing to some degree. But then, like, informal rules are things that basically you do or your play group does, and in how you structure, and those things are like sort of how you structure a game, how you sort of pace things, right? These are sort of informal rules, and downtime is a good example of a thing that in like mini games is many instances of you actually playing the game, not just a rule system, is something that you would do informally. Okay, you're
Yeah.
done with the fight, here, and you just sort of manage downtime in any old way that you're going to do, and it's a lot of the value you bring Power by the Apocalypse, which is a great example because the Bakers, I think one of the things that they do really, really well is that they do a great job of finding common informal rules patterns and turning them into formal rules,
Yeah. 100%.
right? And it's like a lot
Yeah.
of what the power of what the PPDA games have done is they take some of these like very common patterns for of informal rules and they made them formal rules that are then easy to consistently for anybody follow and use.
Right.
And then what we're talking about, I think, with downtime here is how Blades, how Pathfinder have found a way to sort of take these informal structures and give them formal structures to make them easy to sort of use and build your game around.
Yeah.
And last part of the soapbox, sorry, and I guess in that what I tend to judge the quality of a role playing game by these days is actually not the cleverness of rules, as heresy as that might be to say, but how consistent can the experience be the game? If I run a game
Yeah.
and you run a game and someone else that we don't know runs a game, how much are our games like? If we describe our games to each other, do we like look at each other and go, "What were you playing?" Right?
Yeah.
Like I know many RPG things where it's like people are talking to me about what they were doing in the game, and I'm just like, "What game were you running?" Right? Because like my game sounded
Right.
nothing like that. Right?
Been there.
And it's like how can we consistently in our RPG designs like have people have a certain like experience? And so I think
Yeah.
and to that end, I think these downtime rules that we were talking about help build that consistency. I think one of the strengths of Pathfinder is when I talk to people about their games, but they have all sorts of great stuff happening in their games that I aren't running in mine, and vice versa. But I'm never talking to someone about Pathfinder and they're like, "Oh, I did this thing," and you're just like, "What rules? Wait, how would you?" That sounds
Right.
crazy. Like what? Like
Yeah.
like nothing sounds crazy. I'm like, "Oh yeah, I understand how you did that in your game and blah blah blah. You use this rule and like we were all on the same page."
And that is really nice. And it's one of my favorite things about talking about games is when you know that everyone's coming at it from the same frame of reference.
Hmm.
And you're right. The way things are being designed right now really excites me because so much of it is being designed with a little more intentionality, I feel like, than
Hmm.
it used to be. People are being more mindful of the mechanics that they're using. And that is great because once again, as a game master, I I will take all of the mechanical assistance I can get. And even if I don't use all of it, I love it that it's there because even if I'm not actually using the tables that you gave me, I've got a foundation to start with so that I have a better idea of how to, keep the plates spinning and keep all of the players engaged.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Well, awesome. Do we have anything else that we want to say about downtime?
I I mean, I could probably do another 20 minutes, but I don't think I should. so
Same. Yeah.
so So I've said everything I feel like I should say. This is something that maybe if we felt like revisiting this, I've got some other things I could bring up. But no, I think we're good.
Well, awesome. Well, I guess we will end it here and see everybody next episode.
Excellent. Thanks so much for listening, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.